Welcome to a new episode of the Perspective Shift podcast. This is episode 19 and it is about role models and how they affect us in the different stages of our lives. We will talk about what makes someone a role model and how and why we choose certain people to be influenced by. We will also talk about the danger of having the wrong role models in our lives and how they affect our decision making in a negative way. We'll also ask the question, do we need role models in the first place? Are they necessary in our lives, or is it possible to live our lives completely free from being influenced by anyone? So we hope that you enjoy this episode and let's get into it.
Personally, I like to differentiate between role models and people you look up to, mainly because I feel like every role model is someone that you look up to.
Of course, yeah.
But you can look up to people without them being role models. In the sense of like you can look up to certain aspects, certain behaviors, maybe certain patterns of thinking of somebody without them being like a role model for you. So like you could know someone and you know that they've got a lot of good qualities and they've got their life together, wherever you want to do it.
But you don't align with them as much as
Exactly.
someone who is a role model in your
Exactly. So like you look up to them in the sense of like, oh, like I like this person. I like a lot of the qualities they have.
I like a certain trait
But we are too different, so you don't consider them a role model.
Yeah.
But like whereas if you have a role model, then you definitely look up to them and they're definitely aligning with who you are, with your inner values, if you want to call it like that.
Where you're trying to head to in life.
Exactly. And I also like to differentiate between childhood role models and adulthood, mainly because we've mentioned this before, but I'm just going to go ahead and mention it again. As you grow up, your social circle expands. It starts with family, and then it goes to, I don't know, relatives, friends, or people at school, and then it starts expanding to nowadays or in modern society globally. And of course, when you start up or when you're a kid, your role models or the people that you look up to are usually affected or within the circle that you are working within. So like your parents, and then it goes to school, and then it goes to people from work as well, and then it goes to globally because you're starting to get globalized through the internet.
I don't think it's only because your social circle expands. I don't think that's the only reason why your role models change, but also it's related to the influence because you're watching more stuff on TV and you're interacting with other people and you're just gathering more information, so you're more influenced.
Definitely. But look at it like this: you wouldn't get exposed to any of these things if your social circle is not expanding.
Sure.
So I relate it like originally to this, and then you add other factors to it, which is like you said, you know, you're getting to know more things, you're exposed more. Maybe you're more in alignment with who you are and who you want to be, and then you start kind of nitpicking. Exactly.
You're growing. Right?
Exactly.
It's bound to change, I would say. Even your values change. You have more experience. You face more things in life. So that makes things change as well.
Definitely. You become also more aware of who you are.
Yeah.
And a lot of things. Before we go on, I want to go a little bit of the other side of the spectrum, just to bring it into perspective here, is that I feel like that, at least that's based on some of my own experiences and experiences of people that I've met and gotten to know and got to know a part of their story at least, is that not everyone necessarily grows up with a role model. Some people are exactly on the opposite end of the spectrum. So they have people they look up to. Like we said, not every person they look up to is a role model. They have people they look up to, but they don't have a role model. Rather, instead, they have people and situations that they don't want to be like, or they don't want to get the same situations or events in the future.
You mean when you're a kid, or in general, even later?
Growing up. So I would say that's mostly as a child, and maybe as a teenager. When you're starting to explore life and you're starting to build up who you want to be and who you are subconsciously, of course.
Yeah. So when you are basically a little bit less self-aware and
exactly. So I don't know. So like take an example of people whose parents are, let's go with drug addicts. The kid growing up is going to notice that one of the parents is a drug addict and is doing a lot of wrong things, or at least for the child, are considered to be wrong or bad behaviors. So the kid is going to be growing up thinking that I don't want to be a drug addict because I've seen the pattern that my father or my mother are going in.
He will intuitively know that.
Exactly. He would start thinking to himself that this is not a path that I want to take in my life, and they're going to start to avoid it. And then when they grow up, drugs are going to be like a no-no for them. You don't even have to negotiate it with them or explain it to them or even ask them why, because it's a no-no for them based on the experience that they've got.
Sure.
The difference here, going a little bit deeper into it, just again to bring in a perspective, I feel like this is just our subconscious trying to filter out what we want and what we don't want in the future. On a deeper level, it's like the brain or the subconscious is choosing your poison. You know the quote that we all say, choose your poison.
Yeah.
This or this. Exactly.
There is always a backside. There is always something that can go wrong. There is always something.
Exactly. So it's that kind of the brain choosing your poison. I don't want this, I don't want this, I want this, and I don't want that, First of all, would we, or would you at least, consider this kind of situation? Even the people that have other people that they don't want to be like, would you consider that a role model?
If someone, like, you mean if someone is a drug addict, if someone is a bad person?
Take the example that I just mentioned, where like one of the parents is a drug addict and the kid is like, I definitely don't want to be like that. Would you consider that to be a role model or not?
I would say in that situation, we go back to what you mentioned in the beginning, that they can be someone you look up to. Like maybe your dad is a drug addict, but he still has moments where he showed kindness and some good traits that you might look up for, but he's not going to be your role model. Your role model might be someone else. Maybe your nice uncle who is a very good person and who has big goals in life and he's very successful. Maybe he will be your role model instead. I think our brains, when we are growing up, are naturally going to lean to find certain role model in our life, someone to look up, not only to look up to, but actually a role model because of this influence that we have. So we have some certain inner values that we want to cultivate, and we see that our uncle has the same values and we want to improve at that. So we just interact with our uncle more and more, and we really look up to him more than we do with our dad or with our mom. That's where I would consider that a role model. You want to be just like him. You want to do the same profession. You kind of want to copy him to a certain degree. That's for me is when a person is more like a role model.
Okay. I was thinking that technically in a really, I don't have a way to explain it that well, but technically you can take that example as a role model, but from the other end of the spectrum, in the sense of like, this is a role model for the things that you want to avoid. It's not a role model that you want to be like, but it's a role model that you want to.
I get it. It's
you know what I mean? It's kind of setting an example for you in the future that you don't want to be like that.
I see it. It's like a passive experience that you're having, that you see how your dad is behaving the whole time, his addictions, his aggression, all of these things that you don't want. And he's an example, a constant example of what you don't want. So yeah, I really like that frame of mind, I guess. I like to look at it that way as well. It's pretty interesting that you just go on in life, and every time you see some, for example, you go with your friends, some new people that you met, and they want you to start taking a certain drug, and your value says that you don't want to take drugs, and you remember how your dad, how he started to get addictions and problems, and that's what you remember. Yeah, now I'm sure that I don't want to take a drug. So maybe that's like, I guess, how do you want to call it, like a negative role model?
I don't know that. So the reason why I'm going this direction is because I wanted to get into the difference between a good and a bad role model. But it just occurred to me that you can consider this
responsible for you,
a role model that you wanna, that
you don't want
tells you not what not to do, but it's, I don't know, it's negative on the one side of the coin.
It's like the angel and the devil.
Exactly, but it's also positive on the other end of the other side of the coin. That's like you have a coin with like, this is the role model, and in this perspective, it's a negative role model. But another perspective, it's actually quite a positive role model because it's kind of taking you in the direction that you want to go into.
Then maybe the word role model doesn't fit, but I don't know what word you can use.
Exactly.
I'm only like now what I'm thinking about is just this religious context where you think about what the angel is doing and what the demon is doing, and you want to be more like the angel, the good guy who's doing good things, and not like the demon or the devil who is saying bad things and doing harm in the world, I guess. So I like to see it in that way as well, but I don't know if the word role model is fitting because a role model, it's more like a positive word, I guess. Like, I don't know.
But even so, like, if I'm going to go and build up on your example of the demon and the angel, the demon can also be considered a positive role model because technically you not wanting to be like the demon is or has a positive impact.
It has a positive impact on your life.
The demon itself may be or might be considered a negative entity, creature, whatever you want to call it. But the relationship between you and the demon is a positive one. It's a positive experience for you because you don't want to be like that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that raises the question: is this relation, or is this a bad or a good kind of role model? So just
it depends on the perspective. Like, even if you say you watch TV and you hear about some psychopath or someone who killed someone, who murdered, who raped, who stole something, and you don't want to be like these people. These are the examples in your life that you don't want to be like. And if they didn't exist, you wouldn't know what that thing is in the first place. We are all capable of good and evil. So that's why the topic of influence itself is very important, because if these other people don't exist who are doing the opposite thing, then there is nothing that you can compare yourself with. So how do you know if you're a good person or a bad person if you didn't see all of these different examples? If you didn't know that.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
So that's where I guess I'm a bit different than you, because you can always raise up the question, what's good and what's bad? And we don't even to this day, we don't have I feel like we don't have an answer to what's good and what's bad. We have an answer to what's better and what's worse. But you know what I mean?
We know what's better and what's worse based on all of these different things that have happened already,
Exactly. But at the same time, again, you don't know. So every event in life, even the negative ones, what people consider to be the negative ones, could be a positive event from a specific perspective, or to specific people, or to specific situations. Yeah. You know what I mean? So for me, at least, I always raise it the question, what's good, what's bad, what's positive, what's negative? And the answer is always unknown. I can do it subjectively about like, okay, this is what's good for me, this is what's bad for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is what's good and this is what's bad. It means this is my perception, or the way that I perceive what's good and what's bad. But objectively, I don't feel like we have. I don't know if wisdom is the right word here or not, or data. We don't have the capacity, maybe, to define what's good and what's bad in an objective manner, because what's good and what's bad, it's like a huge equation where you can add so many things from so many different angles and so many factors that you just cannot. We're not able to take all of these things into perspective or into calculation, add it to the equation so that we can come up with the answer, is it good or is it bad? But I guess we can do it, like I said, like what's better or what's worse. I feel like that's an easier question to ask.
It's not. I think this is also a good reason why role model is it's a double-edged sword thing, because you might think something is good for you, that this role model is good for you, but
in a few years you might find it bad.
So this brings us actually to the next point, which is role models when we grow up. Like, obviously, when you're a child, you're doing this very subconsciously. Your role model could be one of your parents, whether it's a negative role model or a positive role model, however you want to call it, someone you don't want to be like or someone you want to be like. You do it more subconsciously. But when you start to grow up, it becomes more of a conscious effort that you read a book of some author that you really like and you really like the way he thinks, and you start to see this person as a role model. You want to adopt even more values that he has, and you see yourself becoming more and more like him in the future because of a positive impact he has on your life. So you do it more consciously, and what might seem for you very positive in the beginning might, maybe, as you said, maybe after a couple of years is not going to be so positive. So it's a really difficult thing to approach. How do you know if you're picking the right role models or not, I guess?
But we're gonna go back to the basics here
Yeah.
again. At least that's how I look at it for myself. We've mentioned this before, and the things that you learn in your childhood are the things that you have to unlearn in your 20s or your
Same, yeah.
teens, and the things that you learn in your teens are the things that you have to learn in your 20s, and so on and so on and so on.
Just like
So
so many.
say exactly. So say that you picked up or you chose a role model that focuses mainly on efficiency, getting things done, the future.
Yeah.
You know, logical role model, and you start implementing what they're implementing and start trying to adapt a similar lifestyle to them, and you get far, you get where you want to go. You get into that path, or maybe you get even further and start achieving some of the goals that you want to achieve. But then in a few years, or maybe at some point down the line, you realize that you're not really living the life that you want to live because you've been just logical and you've been just about efficiency and about this and this from the role model that you chosen to pick up for yourself.
Sure.
And then you forgot the other end of the spectrum, which is, you know, joy, joy, agency, gratefulness, and this and this. And then start realizing, okay, maybe that was a bad pick for me. And that's how I look. That's how I like to do it. So, like for me personally, I like to always take the whole spectrum, both ends of the spectrum of life and of what I want for the future. Do I want to be, I don't know, more on the logical end? Do I want to be more on the emotional end? Do I want to be more on the efficiency? Do I want to be more on the slow life? Do I want to be more this? Do I want to be more this? And I try to find where I kind of want to be,
Sure.
knowing that at some point it's probably going to be different, and I'm almost certainly going to be wrong about it right now. And then based on that, I would see the people and like get to know people, and then and decide what kind of people I want to follow in their paths, or at least take similar paths to them,
Mhm.
based on how much I want to be on each spectrum. And I start to nitpick people about, like, okay, this is a person that I really like the way they talk about things. I really like the way they think. I really like the lifestyle, and I try to start adapting some of the things that they do.
Yeah.
And if somebody's like, okay, no, he like aligns with only one of the 10 things, for example, then yeah,
Start to,
I start being a bit more, maybe I should not. And sometimes I even like to test the waters in the sense of like, okay, I'm gonna see if I follow in this path, how would it look like? Then I will decide whether it's a path that I want or not.
okay.
But that's a little bit too technical and too
It's
logical
not.
at
It's
the
not
same
that.
time.
It's not that it's technical. You're mentioning your experience where you're already in an advanced level of self-awareness where you know exactly what you want, and you are.
Okay, but
I'm just trying to say this
if you are
because
in earlier stages, so like for me in earlier stages, I just followed who seemed to be living the life that I want to live.
this is what I wanted to say.
You know?
That the danger when you are not as self-aware, the danger of adopting certain role models is much bigger, because I'm gonna approach it in the sense when you're being jealous of someone. It's in the same, it works in the same way that you are jealous of a certain trait of a person that you want to have for yourself, and you're not looking at all the other traits, at all the other things that that person has. So in the same way, when someone is your role model, there are certain positive traits that you want to have in your life as well, you want to get better at, but you don't realize that this is a unique person who has his own experience, who has his own traits, that other things that might not be so obvious to you, that he is not saying, he's not talking about, you're not aware of. So if you try to be more like him, something is going to backfire, because you're a different person who has a different brain wiring, who has different experiences, and you're just trying to copy other people. And this might work for a while, it might bring you in a good direction in your life, but eventually you're going to feel stuck, and it's like you're wearing a social mask in a
You
sense,
can
not
you gonna
necessarily, but
lose. You're gonna lose.
you're
Well,
going to lose yourself.
exactly. That's what I would say. Like
That's a danger. But
you're
when
gonna
you
lose sense of who you are.
Yeah, but when you are more self-aware, you realize where you need to stop, who you should follow, and when to stop following them, when to stop adopting a certain trait. It's not working for you. it's really important to grow, and in order to grow you need to change certain things about yourself, and that's where having role models can be a good thing. But if you're being too excessive with it without trying to take breaks, and we talked about this personally, privately, when we talk about podcasts, how sometimes you take a break from them because they might be influencing your thoughts a lot, and it's
Yeah.
something that I
Yeah.
relate to as well. When I notice that I listen to a lot of podcasts in the same day, where I'm like, shit, I don't know which are my thoughts and which are other people's thoughts at this point. So that's where taking breaks, slowing down can be very important. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. But so you kind of connected it to different aspects and points. I was able to follow, but I don't know how other people will be.
I'm just focusing here on the danger. Why is it dangerous to follow role models if you're not aware of what you're doing, and why do you have this role model in the first place? That's where it can really backfire. That's what I'm trying to say here.
But at the same time, I feel like I don't think anyone would choose it, even subconsciously. I don't think it's possible to pick a bad role model for you.
He might
willingly, at least willingly, in the
in
sense
your
of like
perspective, he might not be bad.
exactly. But like for the stage that you're in, you would always pick up subconsciously. You know, you would always choose or pick up a role model that fits the stage that you're in right now.
Sure.
Willingly, you know. When I say willingly, and I'm emphasizing on it because you could be manipulated by somebody else so that you are so that they are your role model.
Like a propaganda.
Exactly. And then they can influence you into getting into following into their path. But like willingly or subconsciously or intuitively, the brain would, or the stage that you're in would always reflect the role models that you choose, which
Sure.
are technically supposed to take you to the next stage in your life. Eventually, the story that you tell yourself is the story that's your subconscious is going to be built upon. So if you're telling yourself a story where like, I don't know, you want to go through a lot of, you want to have, so if the story that you're telling yourself is that you want to have a story for the future that you can tell to other people,
Yeah.
you're going to look up for people that have stories
Yes.
and people that will lead you down in a certain path. So you also have your own story to tell in the future.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I follow that, but I think
And then
even
subconsciously you will be doing that. Though.
But I think even the idea of having a story you want to tell other people, you might have gotten it from.
Oh, definitely.
That's what I'm trying. That's why I say it's a feedback loop.
Definitely.
Okay, that's a good point to end this point.
Exactly.
I guess. And I have a question, which is like, do we even need role models in our lives? Like, in my opinion, I don't think it's something you can completely avoid. You're gonna have role models one way or another, but do we actually need to pick and choose certain role models and focus on that aspect? Like, oh, I need to work on figuring out who my role models are that are aligning more with my values. Is this something important in our self-improvement journey? Is it something that we need or not? I guess. Do you
A
think we need it?
short, subjectively answer would be no. I believe that it's good to have role models that align with you, and it's I don't think you can avoid it. I think you're always gonna end up with people you either look up to or you have as role models, whether you want that or not. Of course, it's the way the brain works in a way. Is it necessarily? I genuinely don't think so because I believe that. Okay, my beliefs again, but on the one end of the spectrum is everyone is unique and everyone got their own traits. And if you have a role model that you follow in their path a little bit too much, you could end up kind of losing track and losing who you are.
Yeah, I agree on that.
But at the same time, because we're humans, because the way our brain works and the way we cannot define and know everything at the same time, it's always good to have someone that you can follow into their steps and someone that is kind of giving you and bringing you perspective. Because sometimes you can be way too stuck and way too tunnel visioned on a small thing that doesn't even matter and just making a big deal out of it. And then when somebody else comes from the outside and gives you a different perspective about it, you know, problem solved. Easy peasy. So that's why I feel like it's not necessarily to have them.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have role models that you're adapting what they're doing. Is it necessarily or is it a must? I genuinely don't believe believe so. Because I feel like you've got all the answers within you, technically. And the soul knows I'm referring to it, the soul. I don't know what you want. Soul. Spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I feel like you've got everything that you need to know, or everything that you need in your life within you, in your soul. And when you start adapting somebody else's lifestyle, I feel like that's where the soul starts kind of getting confused. The conscious, maybe the subconscious, are getting kind of confused of like, okay, are we this, are we that, you know? And of course, in its way, that also leads to more growth. But technically, that's what I would say. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's necessarily.
Okay, I kind of think it's not necessarily a must. Like, you can still be a very successful and joyful person, even if you don't have certain role models in your life. But I think if you choose the right people to look up to have as role models, your life can be improved in a certain way.
Definitely.
For me personally, I mean, when I was younger, for sure I had role models. It was mostly related to some Hollywood actors or musicians. It was just naivete, I guess, from when I'm in my teenage years, that I saw them as role models and I want to be just like them. And it just, as I mentioned, it's like being naive. But when I grow up, and especially now, I don't think I have necessarily role models, but I have a lot of people that I look up to.
Say.
And now I have realized that, because before we started this episode, I didn't know that there's actually a difference between having a role model and people you look up to. But once you started describing that, it made sense that there is no individual that I want to adopt so many different traits in their lives. But there are a lot of influencers that I like. For example, Andrew Huberman, Mark Manson, Chris Williamson, that I like certain aspects of their values and the things that they talk about. And that's where I noticed, okay, I kind of agree with this and I like this point and I want to focus on that more in my life. So they have certain traits that I look up to, but I don't want to necessarily be like them or have their lifestyle, which is a different thing. So I think it's something that can be very beneficial in your life if you're being influenced by the right people for you. And how do you know if they're the right people or not? Well, I think that's a process that you need to figure out with time. If
Exactly.
It's not a very easy question to answer. They might seem good in your life, but if you take it from another perspective, or in another person's in different eyes from another person, they might not seem so positive. So it's a very subjective thing, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I guess we kind of started this episode going, we wanted to go in a certain direction, and then spontaneously we kind of ended up going all over the place, to be honest. It's not an easy subject.
It's not just not easy, but I think influence and having role models are really tied together, because I mean, I've wanted to do an episode on influence in the past, but I feel like this episode kind of covers it a little bit, what influence means and why we get influenced. And I think it is the reason why we can't avoid having people that we look up to and role models. So it is something that you can't completely avoid.
Yeah.
But you just need to be careful which people are you getting influenced by, I guess.
I don't like to call it to be careful, because
You gotta be careful though.
yeah, but I don't like the terminology or the way that people think about it. I prefer the word centered more.
Sure.
Because when you're careful, you're always like, you know, on alert. Oh no, oh yeah,
You
know what I mean.
In that sense,
but maybe right now you don't, because you're more aware and more things are more subconscious to you and like easier. But at the start, it's a little bit more like, you know, careful is a little bit, you know, anxious,
a strong word,
you know, stressed out. Exactly. Centered, I prefer it because in the sense of like, okay, I know who I am, or at least I believe I know who I am. You know what I mean.
I'm figuring out who I am.
Exactly. I kind of believe that I know who I am, or I'm working on who I am, or whatever you want to call it. And it's just that some traits or some events or people are kind of either speaking to you or they don't speak up to you, and then when they speak to you, you kind of just know, okay, like this is someone that I like, or this is someone that I like how they think, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And then you just decide to adapt them, or at least learn some stuff from them.
Yeah.
And when it's the other way around, it's not that you're just careful, it's just that, okay, whatever this person says is not really going to influence me that much because I know that they are in a different direction than I am, or a different path than the path that I'm on right now.
I guess I said the word be careful because it goes back to that quote which says that you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Sure, they're not necessarily your role models, but whether you like it or not, you're going to be influenced by them, and
Oh,
you will
definitely.
adapt certain traits that might not be good for you and you're not even aware of it. So if you're not careful in that moment, you might start to change your behavior in a negative way because of a certain trait that is a negative trait that is not good for you. So it's the same way when you're following influencers, when you're reading books, that you might get influenced in a way that you don't want. And if you're not careful in that moment, if you're not centered, then that's gonna backfire.
Definitely.
That's how I connected to having role models and people that you look up to. It's something that you can't completely avoid. So you need to just be more self-aware and realize, is this good for me or not, I guess. So yeah.
I don't have anything left to add, to be
I
honest.
think that's it. We covered everything. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
In the next one.